Despite the fact that nearly any device around your house nowadays can play music to some degree, from your Amazon Fire Cube to your Google Home products, there seems to be an outlier that is clinging to the past while looking to the future. This is the Sony Walkman NW-A307. This is the latest release chronologically speaking from the company in this line, and it's here to party. It plays essentially every format from mp3 all the way to FLAC, Apple Lossless, WAV, you name it. It also has a myriad of featured acronyms like high-res audio, LDAC, DSEE, and much more, but we'll touch on that in a bit. So even though mp3 players seem like something from 1996, Sony has found a way to keep the past alive with a dedicated mp3 player, or DAP, or as they say, a digital media player. So let's take a look at the Sony NW-A307 Walkman. Let's take a look at the build to get things started. This thing is gorgeous. I absolutely love the look of this thing. You get that iconic Walkman symbol on the back. You get these really nice kind of steel cladding lines. You get a power button, a volume up and down, a track forward, a play pause, a track back, and a hold button. On this side there's nothing, and on that side there's nothing. What I really both like and dislike about the bottom is their choice of layout. Now I like the 3.5mm headphone jack, that goes without saying. That's absolutely critical to a digital audio player. I also like the addition of the micro SD card. This is great. That means you don't have to buy an additional higher storage unit. You can just buy micro SDs. I like this door. It's very good. It's very high quality. It snaps into place and it's held by a very thick rubber cable. Now where things get a little bit confusing is this door. It's just a piece of rubber blocking it, and then it just leaves it exposed. And they could have done that there because they have a little lanyard loop which no one really uses anymore. So why they have a removable, separate, unhinged USB door is a little bit beyond me. You also have a flush screen bezel at the front with a Sony logo right there. Other than the glass front, the whole thing doesn't really leave a whole lot of fingerprints, and it's very nice and wieldy. It's quite small actually. If we compare it to a Sony Xperia phone, you'll see it is drastically smaller. This is almost as wide as the phone in terms of the actual screen itself. It's right about there. So it is a very tiny device, and this has a case on it, but it is a little bit of a chunky boy as well. It's not a very thin overall build. It is more like a little bit of a slab. Now we're going to weigh this because we do have to see how heavy this is. If this is going to be something that is going to be your walking companion or something like that, we do have to know how heavy it is. Now just for some frame of reference, with a very light case, we have about 230, just call it 200 grams for a smartphone, and this is going to come in at 108, so about half of that of an actual smartphone. Let's get into it. This isn't a comparison, but we will do a couple parallels here. If you are an Xperia user, you will see that this has a lot of familiarities. It goes from the top drop down into the settings menu. So if this is something you've used before, it's going to be an easy transition, except for one thing. This is very small of a screen, as we said at the top of the hour, but what that reflects into is the fact that you have a very squished UI. You'll see that you can't even really read what everything is right out of the gates. It starts scrolling, but it's almost, that doesn't even help, because as it scrolls you can't get a whole depiction of what the word actually says. So that is going to be a massive learning curve for the average person, is that this is so small that everything is condensed into a little tiny space. But outside of that, let's check out what it can do. Now all those things that we said at the very beginning, roll the DSEE and stuff, we're going to explain that a little bit later, but let's look at the UI. You get the top drop down, you get internet, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. Now you don't get any 3G, 4G, 5G for the layman, which is cellular data communication, so you can't use it as a cell phone, but you kinda could. If you had a device like this and you tethered it to here, you could use this as a dedicated Xperia phone effectively, because it's like a baby Xperia. I almost wish they made smartphones in this size just as an option. It wouldn't hurt, seeing that Sony is no stranger to risking things. They have what, 1% market share in cell phones, and yet they release 2 Xperia flagships a year. So you gotta wonder that if anyone's gonna take a chance on these small cell phones, it would be Sony, but I guess not. Now you have some preloaded content there. We'll get into that in a little bit. Now, the thing about this is that you're not going to use it for Chrome. You're not going to use it for the Play Store. You're not going to use it for Google services and email and stuff. Although you could, it comes preloaded with all of that. And anything you want, you just sideload in APKs or use that micro SD to just put a bunch of apps on and just load them in via the launcher, because you do have File Explorer and you have basically every way to get apps. I mean, Google Play Store, you have millions of applications. What this is for is audio capabilities. So as you see here, you have things like equalizer, you have DSEE Ultimate, you have DC phase linearizer, dynamic normalizer, vinyl processor. Again, don't worry, we're going to get into all this. And you have Clear Audio Plus. Now there's a lot of basic things you can do, a lot of advanced things you can do, and there's a lot of features this has that is industry standard and proprietary that Sony has pioneered. You can also go over to here and you have a dedicated Walkman app, which I kind of feel is nice. It's a nice homage to those old school Sony Ericsson phones from 2005, you know, those ones that slid up and down and swiveled, and you had a proprietary jack for your headphone. You couldn't use a 3.5. You had to buy the one from Sony, which was this huge double prong kind of lobster claw that goes in. It was just a whole fun era of our lives. Now, there is one thing I must recommend you really focus on this unit. Sony releases a lot of things like recorders and radios and clocks and dictaphones, and they all have speakers, either just as a bonus or not. This doesn't have a speaker. Now, I understand you're not spending $300, $400, $500 all the way to $3,000, which is a little bit silly that they have devices that expensive, but they do. You're not buying those to listen from a tiny little speaker. But what I would like to see is them delete this little lanyard thing and put a speaker there. And why that is just to get an idea of where you are, not to consume the media, not to really get the whole experience, because you can't from a little tiny speaker, but at least to as a pleasantry, they should have put a speaker to get your bearings. I don't know where I am in this song right now when I click it. I don't know how far I am. I don't know how to lead into it. I don't know if my volume is going to be sufficient enough so when I plug it in, I would have liked to see that little tiny touch to just give me a little bit of a map as to where I am. I understand there's time code and I understand there's a volume code, but it would have been nice to at least have that. And in a pinch, if you needed something while you're working on your car or something, you could have some audio playing to any degree, not the full degree, but even 2%. It would be nice to have that, and they just didn't include that. And that's one of the only shortcomings I can personally find, because as a DAP, this is truly perfect. I mean, it does and has everything for you. Storage for unlimited songs and 3.5 for direct access to a hardwired connection, as well as the ability for Bluetooth and Wi-Fi for Wi-Fi powered headphones. So there really is nothing left out, and USB-C for USB-C powered things. So really, in terms of a package, it gets it all done, but they just missed the mark on that little thing. They also have a dedicated Headphones Connect app. So they do give you all the ability to get you going from the ground up of whatever you're going to need. For any true audiophile, I really do like the equalizer. You can toggle all these on, by the way. You can leave everything off. Clear audio, equalizer, DSE, phase limit. You can leave all that off, vinyl processing. But if you turn that on, you can go down to custom and adjust these. So you can choose exactly what column you want, and you can put them up to whatever row you want as well. So you can get that kind of, you can get something flat, you can get a balance, you can go back, and there's tons of presets as well that will preset with their parameters whatever they think it's going to be. Or if you don't want it, you just turn it off entirely. So they give you the option to not only have these features, but choose to use them either as a complete blanket default or just turn them off altogether. Now here comes the technical portion of this review, so stick around as best you can. There's a lot of terminology and abbreviated symbols that Sony is throwing at you when it comes to the advertisement of this unit. So let's start off with high-res audio. High-res audio means high-resolution audio, which equates to audio that has been captured and reproduced at a higher bitrate, 24-bit, 96 kilohertz, and beyond, which for the layman means it allows you to experience music much closer to the way it was actually recorded. DSD is one of the best lossless audio formats. Originally actually trademarked as a name by Sony and Philips, has slowly turned into a bit more of a generic throw-around word in the world of audio. It's extremely technical, but basically it stands for Direct Stream Digital and offers a higher bitrate than FLAC files, which is already colloquially known as lossless audio. However, DSD does have a trade-off in that it lacks modulation and bit depth, but there's absolutely no way we can dive into that in this review. LDAC. It is a proprietary audio coding technology developed by Sony themselves, which allows streaming high-resolution audio over Bluetooth connections at up to 990 kilobits per second. Basically, the infrastructure is in place to have less quality loss when transmitting audio through Bluetooth devices like headphones and speakers, which traditionally some electronic devices suffer from. 360 audio. Well, we're gonna skip over this one because if you look on the Sony website, there's about 4 pages, 3 videos, and 14 subsections all defining and promoting what 360 audio is, but basically, to sum it up, it's a super high quality experience developed by Sony that allows the user to get the full experience from vocals, pianos, to individual high and low notes, so maybe read up on that if you have the time. MQA Audio. This stands for Master Quality Authenticated. This file format achieves a way to digitally capture, as close as possible, the audio to the way it was originally recorded via analog. So it sounds as good as the original? Well, not really, but again, as close as you can get with digital. DSEE Ultimate. Using AI, DSEE, Digital Sound Enhancement Engine, upscales compressed digital music files in real time while you're listening to it, which delivers even greater benefits for CD quality lossless audio. It restores things like acoustics, subtleties, and it has a greater range. It provides a richer, more complete listening experience. Finally, vinyl processor. This picks up a lot of the things lost when you move into a digital format. I'm almost certain they have some fancy schmancy reasoning for this one as well, but we'll leave it at that and basically say that this has really good audio, everybody. Incredibly high build quality, gorgeous sound, and a reputable brand from one of the biggest electronic manufacturers in the world make this a great media player if you needed something to separate yourself from a cell phone. However, inherently, the idea is a little bit redundant. The operating system and UI is incredibly squished due to its small size, and it's not the cheapest thing in the world, all things considered. In the end, if you did need something you wanted to hook up to a stereo system or just have as a dedicated unit, you can't go wrong with this digital media player. Some of their units in their lineup are grossly overpriced, costing as much as $4,000, which is honestly just ridiculous. But this one falls right in line with a viable purchasable product. If you want to grab one of these, details are down below.